Stephen Woods is going to be giving it to you. Stephen has written the book Digital Body Language. Is that right?
That's right.
And he's also going to show you Eloqua. I said it right, correct? Eloqua, which he is the CTO and founder of. So I'll let you take it away because I know you've got a fairly intensive presentation. So you guys are welcome, Stephen.
All right, so quick intro to Eloqua. We do a lot of work with complex buying processes. So big tech companies, big financial services companies, sports teams selling NBA tickets. Basically anyone trying to drive revenue for things over about $10,000 in average selling price. So the challenge there is figuring out how to drive that revenue. Needless to say, it's a pretty complex buying process, and the effect of social media is difficult to understand. The ROI question comes up a lot. The what on earth do I do with it question comes up a lot. So I want to give you a little bit of an introduction to how a number of the companies we work with are starting to think about how social media fits in and how they're changing their view on buying behavior. To do that, though, I want to start off by taking a buying process. This is the buying process for something long and complex. This occurs over about 6 months. And I want to kind of jam it down to about 3 minutes to give you a sense for the kind of buying process we're dealing with. All starts out here. We've got Bob, our buyer. He's happy with the status quo. This is a web analytics example. I imagine most people are fairly familiar with it, using our friends Google Analytics. Well, of course, what happens next is his boss goes to a conference much like this one and sees a panel discussion talking about the future of web analytics, comes back to Bob and says, in that way that bosses do, I want some of that web analytics magic. Go get me some of that. You've been in this situation before. So, of course, what does Bob do? He goes out to Google, he does a search and says, okay, I want a comparison of web analytics vendors. What is out there? Finds this piece by Avinash Kaushik, looks at that, gets a comparison of the web analytics vendors, hones in on one of them that he seems to like, Web Trends. He goes to the website. We all go to the main website as some part of that buying process, starts looking around. Bob starts to like what he sees. He sees some data visualization tools here. He sees they've got a mobile application. He likes that for his field team. He digs into some white papers. He drills in on all the technical details. He even goes to their social community, runs around a little bit to see what kind of partners they've got and what other things are possible. He likes what he sees. Bob comes back and talks to Wendy, the webmaster. A little bit cynical, webmasters always are. And Wendy's question, is this going to integrate with everything else that I've got? So what happens next in the buying process? Well, Wendy goes back to the web. She starts looking again at the technical details of the Web Trends API, digs in there, can't quite get her questions answered, goes to Twitter, asks on Twitter, can I actually integrate this? Runs into our friend Justin Kistner, social media expert at Web Trends, who directs her to the blog. She looks at the blog for a while. She downloads a recorded webinar, gets her questions answered, and she's happy and tells this to Bob. So Bob goes to finance and says, I like it, can I buy it? Finance, being cynical, says to Blair, the blogger, you know, I'm going to take a little piece of your budget because some of the stuff you were doing overlaps. I'm going to steal that. Blair is a little bit upset. He's got a little objection. Can Web Trends replace what I was doing? He goes back to Google, does a quick search, digs in on the support portal, finds that his answer is okay. They all go back to the boss and say, we want Web Trends. This is the buying process, roughly. And of course, what we track, what we analyze, is what happens next. The boss goes to Google, types in one word, Web Trends, does a search, fills out the Contact Us form, talks to his sales reps, and makes a purchase. If we run our analytics on that, revenue $100,000, a search campaign to put the Web Trends word out there, ROI 1,000%. Not exactly reflective of what happened in that buying process. But this is that very real challenge that anyone selling something complex faces. The complexity of that buying process is very, very real. A couple of observations to share with you. Buying. It's online. Everything that happens today is online. It's complicated. You saw that firsthand. And here's the important thing for marketers. It's not about you. It's not about you. It's about the buyer. So let's dig into this. It's online. What can we actually do about this observation that buying has now moved 100% online? So the obvious answer, we all love this as marketers, we're going to put up a web form, right? Slap a web form, we'll ask people. Well, a little study here from Marketing Sherpa on buyer honesty. Bit of an eye chart, but the colored bars there are buyers lying. The lighter colored bars are buyers telling the truth. You can see that generally, on name and email, people kind of tell the truth. Everything else, they pretty much lie on those web forms. Not a great way to get that deeper information on buyer behavior. So what do? Well, that's where the concept of digital body language comes in. Understanding buyers' behavior in the online world gives you a clue as to who they are as an individual, what they're interested in, and how engaged they are. I'll walk you through an example here. This is the story of one of our sales reps, Jill Rowley, selling to Daniel Greenberg, the CMO of a company called TrialPay. So, bit of background here. Jill had tried to sell to Daniel previously, hadn't gone anywhere, but they had a little bit of a relationship, and Jill noticed that Daniel's title on LinkedIn had shifted. He'd become the CMO at TrialPay. So she reached out to him, got no response. Then she noticed, this is that digital body language coming into play, he does a search for marketing automation, comes to our website, looks around for a little bit. Jill emails Daniel and says, Daniel, I know you're looking, I know you're considering vendors, we got to talk. This time there's an opportunity for us to work together. And Daniel calls her back and says, you know what, Jill, I'm sorry, you've been eliminated, and here's the 3 reasons why. Common objections that Jill has heard. Sorry, you're not even on our list for consideration. Well, over a period of time here, Jill carefully nurtures Daniel. Sends him blog articles, sends him media coverage, sends him fact sheets, all pieces of information to refute those underlying assumptions that were wedged in Daniel's mind. And finally, after a period of time, this point right here, Daniel says, you know what, Jill, that's great. Let's do a demo. Let's show what you got. It's been a while since I've seen it. Excellent. They do a demo. All of a sudden, not just Daniel, but the entire buying team is all over the website and looking at the product pages, 4 different versions of the product, and Jill immediately, proactively reaches out to him and says, Daniel, you don't need the lowest version, you don't need the 2 highest versions, you need version number 2, here's why, here's how it compares, and she thinks this is textbook. This has gone flawlessly as a sales process. Next, absolute silence. It turns out that Daniel had ruptured his ACL and was in the hospital for 2 weeks. Story ends happily as she closed the deal. You get the general idea. Online behavior, that digital body language, gives you the replacement for the face-to-face understanding of an individual. Activities, searches, that all gives you an indication of who's interested, what they're interested in, and how interested they are. So the challenge for all of us in 2011 is to start reading that digital body language. Start understanding who Bob really is based on that behavior. And that means piecing together all of this insight. What did Bob do on your main website? What did he do when you sent him an email? What did he do in the webinar that he signed up for with On24 with WebEx? What searches did he do? What blog articles did he go to? What did he do on Facebook? Is he a follower on Twitter? What's he talking about there? Piecing together all of that information to create this rich profile, that understanding of Bob and his digital body language. Because those little subtle hints, much like in body language, a raised eyebrow, a little bit of a smirk, a slight leaning of the head, can give you incredible indicators of intent. Online, it's the same way. Nuances of behavior can give you intent differences between buying behavior and unlikely to buy. Interesting challenge. We did some research here into social media. We looked at the executives who had made the final purchase decision, signed off on a purchase over a period of 9 months at the end of last year. For the ones we could find data on, the average number of personas they had online was 2.8. So they might have had, outside of their email, a Facebook, a LinkedIn, a Twitter profile. They had a significant number of online personas. So for those people that say, yes, social media is interesting, but it's really for the frontline workers and executives don't engage, Entirely not true. For those who signed the check at the end of the day, 2.8 personas on average. So the challenge in 2011 is to piece this all together into one comprehensive picture of that individual's digital body language. So the challenge in 2011 is to be discoverable, to think about marketing from the perspective of the buyer. And I'm going to add another dimension here to how we get attention of what resources do we have to go after. Are we going to pay for it? Are we going to earn it? So we'll take our active, passive, and influence, and we'll figure out whether we're trying to apply a dollar or a person to that media type and see what we can do. So active, obviously, search engine marketing. Someone is searching for a term, I'm going to buy an ad. On the opposite side of the spectrum, search engine optimization. They're searching for a term, I'm going to write the right set of content so it ends up there and they find it. Passive, if I have $1 to spend, I'm going to buy ads, I'm going to do remarketing, I might send some emails, I'm going to have them discover that message at the right moment in time. On the earn side, content marketing. I'm going to put people to work to write interesting content that they will happen to come across. Viral videos, obviously, fit into this category too. Influence, very interesting. If we start with earned, we know what we're talking about here. Social media relations, analyst relations. On the paid side, in 2011, I think we're in a very interesting time because it's the missing bucket here. Can I write a check to acquire attention of influencers? People are trying it, right? We heard from Clout this morning. We can do promoted tweets. We can do Foursquare promotions. We can theoretically tackle this problem. I think if we look back a decade from now, we'll figure out whether the human mind really got itself around this bucket. Because our problem is, generally when we sniff that there was $1 spent on influence, the value of that influence immediately goes down to 0. So there may be an empty box on this chart. If we look back at it a decade, I think it's up to us as marketers and to the neuropsychologists in the room to figure out whether that box does empty, but there's definitely some experimentation going on here.